Hello.
Good
Hi.
evening, Chloe, Professor Lee,
Hello.
audience, and good evening to California.
Hi. So we're live right now, just so you're aware.
How are you all?
I'm good. Thank you for joining. So we were.
Well, it's a great pleasure to do it, and I thank you for the invite.
So viewers, if you're not aware, Ian is joining us all the way from Spain. So he's up at 4 in the morning to do this. Oh,
Yeah.
so what would you like me to refer you as? Is Ian okay? Would you like Dr. Hale?
Ian is fine.
Ian is fine? Okay. So we were just talking about what my first impression of the book was, and I was saying I really appreciated that it was a book about autism written by someone who personally experiences it. I feel like that's really rare and a really important factor in your book.
Yes, I feel that it's a combination of things. My experience as a teacher, and obviously learning about neurodiversity as part of my teacher training, my experience of being autistic, and my experience as someone who's studied genetics, some of the neuroscience of it as well. So sort of coming at it from 3 or 4 different directions, as well as my professional experience as having worked with people, with autism, and with other forms of neurodiversity. That's been, as well as people who aren't, of course. And over the time, I've sort of learned the contrast and been able to express better. And that was one of the reasons for writing the book. What I was trying to do was share these sort of 4 different angles of experience.
Yeah. And there were some really interesting facts I've found in that a lot of people with autism are drawn to pastel colors and like some really fun things like that. So where did you find all that kind of information?
Countless hours of research, basically, plus the experience of stories that people on the spectrum and people with other neurodiversities have told me over the years, and I've always been one for making notes. So I've got, I think Professor Lee has seen a picture writing table with all the notes on the side, and stacks of paper and pets and all the rest of it. So I've sort of collated all that and referenced them, plus obviously my own memories and my own experiences.
So when I sent you pictures for the cover, I sent some with my yellow wig, without my yellow wig, at different locations. So I'm curious why you picked the one where I was at the beach with my yellow hair.
Yes, and it's a very fine cover indeed, and I thank you both very much for it. It really works, and it says what it's, basically it does what it says on the tin.
Great. Do you want to introduce a little bit of your background, Ian, who you are, if there's anything you want to promote besides the book?
Well, the other thing I'd like to promote is the Indiegogo crowdfunding for the research that I hope to do for a big research project. What it's trying to achieve is to bring out the experience of as many people on the spectrum from all over the world as possible, to create a huge database to make that available to the public through Professor Lee's foundation, IFERS, to give a much clearer picture of life on the spectrum across the globe. That's one of the main aims of the project. Well, that is the main aim. The second one is the comorbidities of being on the spectrum. And the particular one I want to focus on, although not the only one in the project I'm hoping to fund, is fibromyalgia, because I've noticed so many people not only have the associated digestive problems with autism or Asperger's, whatever else, but it seemed to me when I was doing my master's research that a lot of the responses I got to the questionnaires that I put out to provide the data for that were also coming back with comments. And when we data mined the whole collection, it sort of stood out at me, and I thought, this is something that needs a lot of further investigation, and it's something I'm very passionate about doing. So there are those two things, the book, because I want to share experiences, and the crowdfunding, because I want to be able to give the world a much more sort of three-dimensional picture of life on from age whatever through to, from 8 to 80, let's say. That's the goal.
Mm-hmm. I definitely support Ian's research. As I mentioned before, IFERS, Institute for Education, Research and Scholarships, we do a lot of different type of research, and this is definitely one of the important research that we need to do more about. See, the thing is that a long time ago, autism, Asperger's syndrome, they were not so well known, and a lot of people didn't know about what to do. Parents didn't know what to do. For example, my younger brother, was very difficult, for my parents to take care of, because he just did not behave like a regular child. He was very strange, and we didn't know why at the time. Now we do, right? Now it's because of autism, because of Asperger. But back then they didn't know. So I think we need more research, we need more understanding, and also we need to come up with ideas of how to lessen the effect, how to help children, what do you say? How to Corey, can you help me? So how do you feel?
What I'm looking to do is to try to find out the type of support that they need throughout the whole of life. It's not only about children, that obviously is a primary focus, but it's about the experience of older people. For some reason, a lot of the general public, and indeed a lot of the professions as well, seem to think that autism is something that you grow out of, that suddenly when you get to 18, that's okay, you're on your own. But we all know that is not in the least the case. So it's about follow through, and that's why I want the project to be so big.
Yeah, I found that as well, which is why we created Autism, was to start creating programs and support for those who are adults, because there's not much out there for adults, especially for the higher functioning or less impacted, whatever term you want to put there. So we created LifeMap, and we created these support groups and various things for those like me. And I would talk about, oh, these are the programs I would like, and this is the support I would wish I existed somewhere. And so instead of waiting for someone else to do it, me and my mom started just creating that. And other people seem to like the ideas I had, and such as this live stream, such as my blog, and our support groups and life map. So it's been really nice to get the feedback from people, and all of our programs are critiqued by those on the spectrum, and because that voice is really important, because they're the people who are gonna get the most out of it.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I agree totally. Yeah, I think support from friends and family, very important, very essential. So just give an example, my younger brother is now quite successful in spite of what he used to have, autism, Asperger. Now he's more sociable, not as much as regular people, but still, now he's a family of his own, he has his own business, so everything works out fine for him.
Yes, and we hope to, to make that a much better understood thing, and to support people through that. Mm-hmm. You and I have talked about this before, Professor Lee, and we're very much agreed and very much on the same focus and the same wavelength. And I know very well that Chloe is as well.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and I also want to add that it is actually part of the focus that we have for the IFRS Wellness Center. So the Wellness Center, that is a new initiative. And what I've done is that I put together a group of scientists, biologists, and psychologists. And basically, we're looking at how to extend human lifespan, but also a quality of life. That's very important. Not only do we want to live longer, but we also want to live healthier, longer.
Yes.
Okay. So, but that means it's not just physical, but also mental, psychological as well. We need wellness, the whole package. Physical wellness and mental wellness, and together, you have a really happy and healthy human being. Because we need that in order to pursue a lot of things, like helping the world, write a new song, write a new book, all kinds of things we want to do. We need to be in a good state of mind and good physical health.
Yeah, absolutely vital. And as you know, that the IME projects are very much of an interest of mine. I know Dr. Aubrey de Grey. I was at Institute in Cambridge, and I followed that up from there. And one of the people that involved in that is my friend Anna Alonzi, who I know you've spoken with or communicated with. Mm-hmm. So yes, it is, as you say. When you say that it is all part of a package, that's absolutely hit the nail on the head, completely.
Yeah.
As you rightly say, if we make people healthier and happier, the more people we make that way, the happier and happier the world will be, and surely that is one of life's great purposes. And that's another reason for writing this book and pursuing the project, and the projects that you just spoke about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I found not only is there not much information about autism, but there's a lot of misinformation as well. So I'm really glad this book is out there to start balancing that and going, here's someone with autism who is telling you that these are the facts, this is what I live with, that hopefully people will look at that as the right answer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, speaking of which, you're right, because the social media and things like that, you don't know what is truth and what's not anymore. It's very hard to distinguish sometimes, especially if you see a video on social media, you form your judgment, but then it turns out to be false because you don't know what's happened before, what's happened afterwards, and what's the context, right? Just an example. So one of my earlier books, Facebook Nation, I talk a lot about, the social media impact on people, because, how do people view autism? How do people react? How can parents take care of children who have autism? Things like that. If you look at social media, there are a lot of conversations going on and so on. But again, there could be information, good information, but there could be also misinformation. That's why it's important to have good books, like Ian's book. I'm sure there are other good books as well, but it's important to get those good books, read them, and understand what's happening.
It is indeed. And also a small part of the book is to talk about the history of autism, and it begins by discussing the actual history and origin of the word itself. So, because I thought when I started to write it, I thought, where shall I start? And the answer came to me, well, how about go right back to the beginning? Begin with the word, and then expand it from there. So that was sort of the guiding philosophy through the book. I also wanted to make it something that was very accessible. You don't have to read it all the way through to get it. The chapters are very carefully ordered so that one can almost use it as a reference book once you have read it. Something handy. I didn't want to write a 400-page text or an academic book like that. There are plenty of those, plenty of medical manual things like that, things from the APA and from the ICD, WHO, and numerous others. I wanted something that, particularly in this very fast-paced world, something that people actually have the time to get at. So what I was looking to achieve was to get to the core of it, and it has a very long bibliography for a book of its length, and that is the hope there is that will help people to pursue their own research as well. It's a sort of a launch pad, as well as being a very concise guide in itself, to the best of my ability.
Yes, I really like references in books because it gives people a perspective of how to look further, how to investigate more into certain things. Absolutely. So let's talk about the title of the book, actually. There's a title, main title, and a subtitle. Now, the subtitle is pretty controversial. Can you tell us a little bit more about the subtitle and what you think the answer is?
Well, the reason I did it, there is, as you say, some controversy about whether Asperger's is a separate condition or whether it is part of the autism spectrum itself. And that's an issue that I've addressed in the book. The way that I see it is, if one looks at neurodiversity as a whole, imagine it's a house. And you have these rooms. You have autism, you have bipolar, you have schizophrenia, and Asperger's as well. And I see those as different rooms with different purposes: bedroom, kitchen, whatever, but all within the same house of neurodiversity. And that's the way that I wanted to do it. So it's not wholly about autism. I do talk about other things as well in it, which again I hope will be helpful, and again comes from my experience of being involved with special education for, frankly, a very long time now, and the research that went into that, because it's possible to be autistic and something else, and I'm far from sure that people understand that. A very good example would have been Kurt Cobain, the founder of the band Nirvana.
Interesting.
So what about... he had two types of neurodiversity. I think most people agreed on that.
What about the vaccine that you mentioned?
Yes, well, that is a very controversial and a very big topic. And it's something that I've addressed in a great deal of depth. and tried to explain the cons and given people medical guidelines and basically to ask them to ask questions. And I've tried to make it a guide as to the most important questions they need to ask their physician or whoever does the vaccinations, whether it be a nurse or a doctor or whoever else. So it's a topic that I felt in all good conscience that I couldn't avoid in the book, shouldn't avoid in the book, because I felt that would be ducking out of the issue. And the book is supposed to be about looking at the whole spectrum and not deliberately avoiding things just because they're controversial.
Exactly.
I felt I felt to do that, it would have been very easy to leave out the vaccination thing, but I felt to do so would be to cheat the readers.
So something smart that you added was that you explained in different places in the world, Asperger's and different terms are used differently, and you explained that very well.
Yeah, so let me go back to vaccines a little bit before. So I have, my background is computer science, but I actually apply computer science to biology and medicine since day one of my study in artificial intelligence and computer science. So I can tell you that human bodies are very complicated. You know, we are still trying to understand our brain, understand our mind. You know, it's really complicated. If we try to model, you know, human body and human mind in terms of like a computer program, it's very, very difficult. Now, also, our body reacts differently to different medication or even food or natural stuff. Okay, the air we breathe. People react to things differently. So I'm not surprised if vaccines causes different reaction in different people. It's just because we are all individuals. There's no, one size fits all. It's all, is it working for you? Is it working for him? Is it working for her, right? That's why we have to monitor every single patient, every single individual to get the maximum benefits of any technology, including medical technology. I think that's a scientific, argument there. You can't say that everything's bad or everything is good. It has to look at, because there are other many factors, right? Because that's like food we eat. We also drink water. We digest we ingest and digest all kinds of things. So sometimes there's something called chemical reactions. Okay. So one of my early computer programs actually it determines automatically chemical reactions inside body, drug interaction and so on. So these kind of things, a lot of times, should be emphasized more than they are right now. I think that, so in a sense, if you look for a cure for something, same thing, a cure may work for someone better than someone else. Why? Because, everyone has a different body, different, chemicals, compositions, let's put it that way. Of course, you can say genetically human beings are this and this and that, but individually, everyone is a little different. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, I mean, every human genome is unique. Even with identical twins, when you explore their genome and when you sequence it properly with the latest machines like the 454, you actually can detect quite noticeable differences even within identical twins. So as you say, it boils right down to the individual. What I've tried to do in the book is to give as balanced a view as possible concerning the risk and reward percentages with vaccination and indeed with other things.
Right. If you think about it, Albert Einstein.
So on the topic of twins, my sister loves to do research and wanted to go into biology. And what she found fascinating about twins with autism is a lot of things that, such as diseases that would be in the body forever, such as she has Crohn's and she has arthritis. It is very unlikely that the other twin will have. But when it comes to autism, with an identical twin, it's up like 80 or 90% that they will both have autism. And it's really high also in fraternal twins, which doesn't also make sense. So it throws that genome away, where in most things, this is how genes work, but with autism, it blows all those rules out of the water.
Yes, there is still a great deal we don't know, and I think that it's going to take, I don't know whether Professor Lee will agree with me or not, but I think it is going to take some years before we have although we've decoded the human genome, to actually understand the interactions between the about 20,000 different genes that we have, and if I remember rightly, about 3 billion different cells just in the brain, to understand how changing one affects all the other 2.9999 billion or whatever it is going to get more computing power than we currently have. And I'm looking forward very much to the new generation of computers, which hopefully will be able to give us a much better.
Mm-hmm. So it's interesting because earlier I was saying that Albert Einstein, if you think about such a genius, he was actually, well, today you will say that he also had autism to some extent.
Oh yeah.
Yet he's a genius. Okay, so I think that it's okay. There are things that actually make people give them some disadvantage, right? Like in social interaction and so on. But that doesn't mean that it's a negative thing. It could be positive in that Einstein keeps himself think about all these ideas, in order to come up with, E equals mc squared, the theory of relativity and so on. But then he's also very kind-hearted. Einstein is so popular not only because of his, being a genius in physical science, but he is so popular because he's genuinely care about humanity. He cares about people. He talks about peace. He talks about people should treat each other better and things like that. So he's pretty active in the social, social areas, not just scientific areas. So I noticed that in Ian's new bio, you mentioned about transhumanism, in a sense, right? The H+, transhumanism. So in transhumanism, we not only talk about understanding our physical body and our mental states, but we also talk about enhancing ourselves. So in a sense, we can enhance ourselves so that the handicapped people can walk again. Just to give an example, the blind people can see it again. And of course, sick people will get well again. Okay, so all these are transhumanist thoughts or endeavors. So I think instead of looking at autism as a disadvantage, we can look at it as a positive thing because Einstein had it. So now you can become a genius because you're autistic, right? I know. I mean, we can look at life in a positive way or negative way. So it's better to look at life in a positive way. And transhumanism, I believe, give us the hope and the tools, scientific tools, to actually achieve something bigger. Do you agree?
Yeah, I like
very much so.
Reframing, instead of looking at someone with autism and seeing all the negatives, you can turn it into a positive. Like, this person is super focused on one thing. Why can't I get them to pay attention to anything else? Well, why don't you let them be really interested in whatever they're interested in and research it and really understand it? Because that's a rarity for someone to be so focused on something. Like, take these ideas that you think are negative and turn them into a positive and celebrate that this person is different.
Exactly. Yes. In Star Trek, we say the infinite diversity in infinite combination.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I mentioned Einstein, but in the book I've not listed, but made reference to other extremely gifted people on the spectrum. One of the great scientists of all time, any man to refuse a Nobel Prize, Nikola Tesla. We know he was, for example. I've mentioned Kurt Cobain. Another famous musician I would mention, who very clearly Asperger's, in retrospect from what we know now, would be Jim Morrison. I'm sure everybody knows about in California. I think he's pretty famous there. Is that correct, Chloe?
What?
In California, probably would still know who Jim Morrison was.
Yeah, I think so. Mm-hmm.
You know, a phenomenally gifted writer, poet, singer, and yet there was a lot more to him as well. The same as Einstein. I mean, Einstein was a musician. There was that very sort of connected artistic side as well, and you find this quite often in people with neurodiversity. The great mathematician John Nash would be another example. The man whose biography is a film, A Beautiful Mind.
Mm-hmm.
I believe Russell Crowe.
Yeah.
And so somebody else we should mention, Dr. Temple Grandin.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
She was the pioneer of really bringing autism out into the public, and she still does. I think of her as the Amelia Earhart of autism, and someone whom I have a great deal of admiration. And I've read her books and her articles and listened to some of her talks. And I think
I like one
she's
thing she says is don't put yourself in the other creature or other person's shoes. You have to put yourself into their mind and what they're going through. She uses it a lot to explain how to train different animals. But I think that's important. It's something a lot of people miss. If you put yourself in that scenario, you're not necessarily understanding the problem. You have to understand other people think differently, and animals think differently. So if you're dealing with someone with autism, you can't just say, oh, what would I do in that scenario? It would be, what would an autistic person do and experience and feel?
yes.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a
agree.
question from Megan. It says, Chloe, I really enjoyed your talk in Redondo Beach. I enjoyed meeting Professor Lee too. So I had a workshop last week that Professor Lee Newton came to and sold some of the books at. There's been much talk in the medical community about testing for mutations through such tests as Ancestry, and then uploading to such sites as Genetic Genie. What are your thoughts about this going forward? So, if you're talking about autism as
some of
a
the,
or just like mutations in general? I'm kind of confused by that.
yes, it's not a very nice word either, mutations. Differences would be, perhaps.
Yeah, mutation. It reminds me of sci-fi movies, you know.
Yeah, you could kind of
Yeah.
in, 40s magazines and stuff.
Superheroes, who are they in sci-fi movies? They're mutated individuals, right? The genes got mutated, and then they become superheroes. So in a sense, Hollywood gave us a very positive, or comic books give us a very positive outlook on mutated people. They don't see them as monsters; they see them as superheroes because they have this newfound abilities to save the world, to fight the monsters, to catch the bad guys. So it's been amazing. But that question actually is a very good question. That I can think of two things. Number one is privacy issues, right? So when you upload the DNA information or your family's DNA information to the central database, then you lose the control over your own privacy, right? And that not only affects you, but also all your extended family and generations to come. Can be your grandchildren, okay? Somehow it will be related and connected somehow genetically to you. And, well, the plus side of that is that they can catch criminals better, right? They have some cold cases that they use the genetic database, ancestry database, to actually find, the killers, that's a good thing. But the bad thing is that, cyber criminals or insurance companies, can dig up all kinds of information, right, illegally, whether it's legally or illegally, and then, do whatever they need to maximize the profits based on information that you volunteer, to give away. It's like you sign up for Facebook. You have all these pictures. You like ice cream. You like to watch Titanic, whatever. All this information is gathered by Facebook, by Google, by whoever wants to market to you. But again, there's a plus and minus. The plus is I want to be marketed to about things I like. Right? If there's a new book that they think I like to read, I want to know about it. That's a good thing. But the bad thing is that they keep, sending me junk mail, junk information, email me all the time. That I don't want. It's just too much information overload. So there's always a plus and minus in one.
If they were to do that, because you're not signing up for that study, it should be in some sort of agreement that when you get your ancestry information, some of your information is always also going to these other places, because that's not right to just take that information without people knowing that they're giving that private stuff to some company or to some research or whatever is using that information.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. I think that a greater transparency is certainly required. And as genetic testing becomes more and more accurate and more detailed, that these are ethical questions that politicians and legislators are going to have to confront sooner or later. And with the rate of improvement in terms of genetic analytic technology, the sooner that question is addressed and answered, the better. I think the whole world needs to start having a very serious discussion about the use of genetic material. I mean, on the plus side, a fantastic amount to be learned there, and it could be one of the great gifts to humanity. On the other side, as Professor Lee says, the issues of privacy, of misuse of information. I mean, information itself is neutral in how it's used. And I think there do need to be guidelines about how information is used. And the more pressing I think that is to address.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do like the fact that, in medical research, we need more data, and the data sometimes are collected because people volunteer for them. So to me, that has a huge benefit, even though there's always a risk of being misused. But oh well, we do it for the greater good, I suppose. So it's better to share ideas, just like patents, for example, has been misused to protect things. Because we really want to advance technology. Why do you want to patent so that nobody else can use it? That's stupid, right? You want to patent this, yes, that's a good idea. But you still should let people advance it so that it can benefit more people, benefit to society instead of just one person or one company, So.
What Jonas Salk did when he the polio vaccine, he prevented it being did. I mean, he never made a penny out of it, but when he did, I mean that would be ideal in every world.
Right.
So returning to the topic of autism, because we only have a few more minutes left. I'm curious, just because you would have more stories about before I was born, living with autism and different things you went through. So when were you diagnosed with autism, Ian?
That's a cool question. I suppose, bearing in mind that as we were talking about earlier, that it really wasn't back then. But my parents, and they told me this when I was older, I didn't know it at the time. I was at primary school, I think you would say in America, elementary school, is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. And my parents were getting a lot of not very positive feedback, shall we say, and they took me to see a psychologist down in Plymouth, which was a very long way away from where we lived. My mother explained to me afterwards, some years afterwards, that what the psychologist has said was that I would be a late bloomer, what we would now diagnose as PDD-NOS, which is one of the unique traits of Asperger's. So technically, I was diagnosed at the age of 7. I was diagnosed as being autistic either in my first or second year at university. One of the people in the psychology department, although I was not studying psychology, and I was diagnosed by Professor William Fraser, who was very well known to Europe as Asperger's, when I was over 40. So it was sort of those three stages of, each one was more exact than the one before. When I did the genetic testing that we discussed earlier, that definitely confirmed it completely. So yeah, it's sort of a tricky question to answer. It's probably the best I can do. It was in those 3 steps, each about 20 years apart.
So you don't have to answer this, but I'm curious, how did you feel when you were given the diagnosis? Were you accepting of it? Did it make things make sense? I've had a lot of people with a later diagnosis think it was like a revolutionary thing and really important, that it made a lot of things make sense, where an earlier diagnosis, people really not felt anything toward it until there was a more positive change in their life due to the diagnosis. So I'm curious where you fall on that personally.
Well, bearing in mind I already knew that I was on the, you know, on the autism spectrum. The Asperger's diagnosis, it came as a surprise. I didn't have any problem at all in accepting it because I knew quite a lot about the psychologist who diagnosed it, who really he's retired now, but he was then one of the top experts. So I had no problem accepting it. I think it took me about 2 years to process it, and as he told me a lot about it and gave me pointers as to where to research and what kind of questions to ask if I want. And as I went through doing things in my point started to make a great deal more sense than they ever had done before. So it was sort of a, I don't know, it was a sort of a growing, and that's still continuing up to now, you know, that every now and again I'll get a memory from the past and think, oh yeah, that's what. So yes, it took quite a while to, as I say, to process it, but it's something that I'm comfortable with now.
I remember, because I got the diagnosis at 16, when I got all the information that came from it, that because there was sort of an IQ test that came with it that told me my strengths and my struggles. One of the things it said that it was almost impossible for me to memorize facts. My memorization was almost not on the scale at all. And I remember arguing with people in the past, like, I can't memorize that. I don't know what you expect from me. And they're like, no, you can. And now I'm like, look, I have proof. Like, I literally can't memorize these sets of numbers that you're asking me to memorize for your test or whatever they were asking me to do. I need to really understand it. I can't just memorize it. And so that really helped me to have that, to feel validated in that I wasn't just making something up that wasn't real. Because when you're told that by so many people that what you're saying is wrong, it can make you feel like, okay, maybe they're right. Maybe I can actually do this if I try. So it was really nice getting that diagnosis that told me what I believed was actually correct.
Yeah, I found very much the same thing. The thing that, what you were saying about the vision and that you could show, or when people have said what they said to you, that's a very eroding process, and it does do damage to one's self-esteem or whatever. You feel you kind of come up short, and when I got my diagnosis, that very much changed my perception of myself. Because like you, it came with an IQ test, and it came with various psychometric tests for personality traits. Yeah, and it's something that did make a great deal of sense, and it's difficult. I'm sure that absolutely convinced that the earlier you get the diagnosis, the better. I mean, I do wish I'd known it a long time ago, but hey, better late than never. But there's no doubt if you get it late, there's no doubt that what you were saying about earlier, the negatives you get when people expect more of you than you actually can do, it definitely damages your self-confidence. And I don't think anybody really ever recovers completely from that.
So we only
So
have
I
a few
I
minutes
really
left.
do
So if anyone
people.
wants to leave a final
So,
question, we'll get to that. Do Newton or Ian, do you have any final thoughts before we end the broadcast?
Well, I do. Well, so I think that a lot of times people try to label things, right? Like some kind of disease, they give a label. This kind of situation, they give it a label. But a lot of times that kind of put a restriction or expectation on people or circumstances. Okay, and as a result, we cannot get past it. We cannot overcome it because it's already labeled, right? So to me, that's pretty sad. What we need to do is to overcome that. Say, look, it doesn't matter the skin color, your eye color, your IQ number. It's just a number. IQ is a number anyway. It doesn't matter what they are. We need to, we can accomplish a lot regardless of all that circumstances, regardless of physical and mental limitation. That's why education is important. That's why research is important, and that's why we need to give people opportunities to study. The scholarships is very important. So all these things, if you fertilize the soil, okay, the plant is going to grow and bear fruit. Okay, it doesn't matter. There may be others, negative circumstances. So yes, people with autism has a disadvantage. People who have certain type of physical disabilities have disadvantages, obviously, right? But everything can be overcome, and not just overcoming by using science and technology, but also by a mindset, by social support, family support, friends, and and things like that. I think if you put everything together, we're going to see, good results.
I agree. My sort of thing I'd like to complete this with would be to say that, well, two things. The earlier you know, the better, because obviously you know what kind of support to access, and keep trying.
Don't give up.
That's a message I want to send out. Keep trying. Don't give up on yourself, ever.
All right. Thank you for joining me, Ian Hale, Professor Newton Lee. Please check out, I have a link to the book on Amazon. You can buy Asperger's, Autism, and You. It's available through that link. Also, check out autism.com, where you can check out my blogs, where I write about living on the spectrum, also the support groups and LifeMap. LifeMap is a great program that helps you define your goals and then breaks down it into small pieces about how to achieve it. And I do that once a week, and it's been really helpful to continue this live stream and everything that I'm doing. I'm going to be working on my workshop next week. So I'm really excited for all these new things I'm doing. I have a new workshop in April in Florida. All the links are on my Facebook page. I will try to get you all the links that were mentioned in this broadcast. So if you want to get those to me, email them to me. I'll share them. Thank you guys
Thank you so
for
much.
watching. Comes back next week at 7 o'clock Wednesday Pacific Standard Time, and I'll have a guest on next week. I think it's Zoe. We're gonna try to. She missed hers as well. She was sick, So we'll try to get Zoe Martin back on. So really excited about that. Thank you, Dr. Ian Hale and Professor Newton Lee for coming on Starlight Talks.
Thank you so much for inviting us.
Thank you very much. Very, very enjoyable. It's an absolute pleasure.
All right.
And
bye, everyone. Stay colorful.
Bye-bye.
cheers.